The Iron Fang armada was like a shadow that swallowed stars. Wherever their ships appeared, silence followed. They came in endless waves of black warships, their hulls sharp like blades, glowing red lights cutting through the darkness. Colonies that had lived in peace for hundreds of years suddenly burned in hours. The Iron Fangs did not ask for surrender. They did not trade. They did not speak. They only took, destroyed, and moved on. Entire cities turned to dust under their fire, and their engines left behind nothing but smoke and ruins. Stories spread across the galaxy. On the desert planet Ralkan, survivors whispered that the Armada had taken their leaders and left the children crying in the streets. On the icy world of Treval, an old radio station kept sending a single message, "Help us," until the Iron Fangs found it and crushed the tower into silence. On Chiron Prime, the once bright capital of 3 species, billions of voices vanished in a single day. Those who escaped told of skies filled with flames, of Iron Fang soldiers marching through broken homes, and of screams that carried into the night until even the screams were gone. The galaxy's great alliances tried to stand against them. The Solari Republic sent 10 fleets. The Armath clans united their warriors. Even the silent Uroks, who had never fought in their long history, armed their moon fortresses. All of it ended the same way. No matter the strength, no matter the numbers, the Iron Fangs broke them. They had technology that no one could understand, weapons that cut through shields like paper. Their strategy was brutal and simple. They hit fast, they hit hard, and they left nothing alive. Fear spread like a disease, faster than the Armada itself. On distant space stations, traders whispered the names of the destroyed worlds. No one said them loud. Some captains stopped flying their routes, afraid they would be next. Families sold everything to flee to hidden moons, hoping the Armada would never find them. Refugees filled the void between stars, begging anyone to give them shelter. But everyone feared that if they helped, the Iron Fangs would notice and strike. Trust between species broke apart. Every race looked to its own survival. In the high councils of alien governments, panic ruled the meetings. Leaders shouted at each other, accusing allies of abandoning the fight too soon. Some begged to form one great army, but no one had hope left. Others argued to hide and let the Iron Fangs pass, praying the monsters would go elsewhere. But everyone knew the truth. There was no safe place. The Armada would not stop until the entire galaxy was theirs. The Iron Fangs themselves enjoyed the fear. They broadcasted images of burning cities to nearby systems, letting refugees see what was coming. They made prisoners watch as their fleets destroyed their own planets before dragging them away in chains. To them, war was not just conquest. It was sport, a way to remind every species that resistance was hopeless. Deep in space, ships carried the last survivors of fallen planets. They told the same story. The Armada's arrival was like a storm. First came the silence, when all communications were cut. Then the sky darkened with warships. Then came the fire, endless and merciless. In hours, all was gone. Survivors spoke with empty eyes, repeating the same words, "No one can stop them. No one." For years, the galaxy lived under that shadow. Children grew up knowing fear before they knew hope. Farmers tilled their soil with one eye on the sky. Pilots jumped at every shadow on their radar. Soldiers trained, but they trained without belief because no army had ever returned from facing the Iron Fangs. There were stories, whispered in hidden corners, about species that had once been powerful enough to challenge the Armada. But those stories always ended the same way: extinction. Some said the Iron Fangs had destroyed entire civilizations so thoroughly that no ruins were left, as if those people had never existed at all. Others said the Armada had been growing stronger for centuries, learning the weaknesses of every race and using them like weapons. In the refugee camps that floated on broken space stations, old storytellers warned the children to stay silent if they ever saw a black ship in the sky. Silence was survival. To be noticed was to be taken. Hope was a word that no longer carried meaning, and yet, deep in the darkness, there were always whispers. Some refugees told of strange signals on the edge of known space. Some swore they had seen a ship, not Iron Fang, not of any known species, watching the battles from afar. No one believed them. Fear was stronger than faith, and in the galaxy of the Iron Fangs, faith was dangerous, so the galaxy trembled. The Iron Fangs ravaged star by star, planet by planet, tearing away everything in their path. The Iron Fang armada drifted through the void like a swarm of predators searching for their next victim. Their commanders had grown arrogant after years of endless victories. To them, the galaxy was already theirs, only waiting to be taken piece by piece. Their charts glowed with new targets, rich worlds filled with resources, trade hubs that could feed their war machine, and civilizations still untouched by fire. One cluster of planets caught their eyes, a peaceful region known for its fertile worlds and bright trade routes. Refugees had fled from other systems and found safety there, believing distance and neutrality would protect them. But the Iron Fangs had decided it would be their next prize. The scouts moved ahead first, slipping into the cluster's outer systems. They watched the skies, scanned the planets, and reported back with mocking laughter. The worlds had fleets, but they were old and small, no match for the Armada. The defenses were weak, the people soft. There were whispers among the scouts that this conquest would be quick, a feast before the real wars continued. On the peaceful moon of Vera, farmers continued their daily lives, unaware of the doom coming their way. Children ran through the golden fields while merchants sold goods in crowded markets. Only the elders looked at the stars with worry, whispering of the rumors they had heard, rumors of fire, of silence, of black ships. But the councils of the cluster ignored those fears. They believed distance kept them safe. They believed the Iron Fangs would not waste time on such unimportant worlds. The Armada gathered on the edge of the cluster, thousands of warships forming a wall of steel in the void. Their command vessel pulsed with red light, its armored hull the size of a small moon. Inside, the Iron Fang commander, a massive creature with spiked armor growing from his own flesh, laughed as he looked at the scans. He ordered the fleet forward. Soon the skies of Vera would burn like all the others. The refugees were the first to notice. Small transports carrying survivors from other systems stumbled into the cluster, their hulls scorched and their voices shaking with terror. They warned the people of what was coming. They begged the councils to flee, to hide, to prepare. But the councils argued that there was no proof, that the Armada was only a story to frighten children. Their voices of reason were drowned in pride. As the first Iron Fang ships entered the cluster, the stars themselves seemed to dim. Their dark hulls reflected nothing, swallowing light. The peaceful people of the region finally saw them on their scanners, blips of doom moving closer and closer. Panic spread across the colonies. Families packed their belongings into ships, merchants abandoned their stalls, and priests whispered prayers to gods they had long forgotten. The local fleets tried to assemble. Old warships, patched and poorly armed, launched from their docks. Their captains spoke bravely, promising to protect their people. But everyone knew the truth. These ships were built for patrol, not for war. Their cannons were toys compared to the weapons of the Iron Fangs. Still they gathered, because doing nothing was worse than waiting for death. The Iron Fang Armada advanced without hurry, confident in their power. Their commanders laughed at the weak defenses they saw. In their arrogance, they almost ignored a strange signal. On the edge of their scanners, just at the boundary of their sight, something appeared. A single ship, drifting in the darkness. Its hull was scarred, its energy faint, its origin unknown. At first, they thought it was a derelict, maybe an old freighter that had lost its way. The commander ordered his scouts to ignore it. But then the signal appeared again, this time clearer, stronger. The ship was not drifting, it was moving. Slowly, purposefully, it turned to face the Armada. Its size was nothing compared to the massive Iron Fang warships, but there was something unsettling about its silence. No known code identified it, no record matched its design. To the Iron Fangs, it was nothing more than an old relic, a ghost from a forgotten war. Still, the commander grew curious. He ordered his scanners to lock on. They read strange energy surges across the ship's hull, but the readings were confusing, as if the vessel carried weapons beyond their understanding. The Iron Fangs laughed again. The galaxy was filled with strange ships, most of them useless. To crush this relic would be no different from crushing a fly. The people of the cluster, however, saw the ship differently. From their outposts and stations, they watched the lone vessel appear on their screens. Some believed it was a savior. Others thought it was only another doomed ship that had wandered into the wrong place. The refugees whispered in fear, saying it was foolish to face the Armada alone. no one could stand against the Iron Fangs. No one. And yet, the mysterious vessel did not retreat. It drifted calmly, as if it had been waiting for this moment. The Armada grew restless. For the first time in years, something had appeared that was not running, not hiding, not begging for mercy. It was watching them, waiting for them. The commander grinned, his fangs sharp and gleaming. He ordered a squadron forward to capture it, to break it open and learn its secrets. The Iron Fangs roared with laughter at the thought. They believed it would be a simple victory, a joke, before the real slaughter began. The strange ship floated in the darkness, silent and unmoving, yet its presence filled the Iron Fang armada with unease. Their scanners worked furiously, sending beams of light and waves of data across the void, but the results were confusing. The ship's hull looked ancient, blackened by battles long past, yet it carried scars that no one could identify. Symbols etched along its side glowed faintly, but no translation programs could read them. The Iron Fang commander growled in annoyance. He had seen thousands of ships from 100 different species, but never this one. It was as if the vessel had come from another time, another war, one that the galaxy had forgotten. His officers sent him reports filled with contradictions. Some claimed the ship had no power at all, that it was an empty husk drifting in space. Others shouted that energy levels inside the vessel were spiking beyond measurable limits. The commander slammed his fist against his console and snarled, ordering the confusion silenced. To him, the answer was simple. The ship was nothing but a relic, and soon it would be nothing but dust. He sent out a squadron of 10 ships, fast destroyers meant to capture or crush small prey. They surged forward, engines roaring, confident that victory would come quickly. Inside the mysterious ship, however, silence reigned. The bridge was dim, its walls lined with glowing panels that pulsed like a heartbeat. At its center sat a single figure, motionless in his chair, watching as the Armada's destroyers closed in. His face was half hidden by shadow, his eyes calm but cold. Fingers moved across the controls with steady precision, not rushing, not panicking, as though this moment had been expected. To him, the arrival of the Iron Fang fleet was not a surprise. It was destiny. Back on the enemy ships, the first destroyer launched a scanning probe, a small device meant to slip into the strange vessel and reveal its secrets. But the moment the probe neared, the screens across the destroyer flickered, then went black. For a second, the crew panicked, thinking their systems had failed. Then words began to appear across every console, words in a language no one recognized. They twisted and shifted, symbols that seemed alive, crawling across the screens like fire. The destroyer's captain screamed orders, but it was too late. The ship's lights dimmed, and the entire vessel went silent, drifting dead in the void. The remaining 9 destroyers hesitated. For the first time, doubt crept into their minds. The Iron Fangs were bred for cruelty, trained to never fear, but something about the silent vessel made them uneasy. They fired their weapons, streams of plasma and torpedoes racing toward the dark ship. Explosions lit the void as the weapons struck, but when the light faded, the vessel still floated unharmed. Its hull shimmered with a faint blue glow, like a shield beyond their understanding. Then the ship moved. Not fast, not violent, but with a slow, deliberate grace. Its engines ignited with a dull golden light, and for the first time, the Armada realized this was no drifting relic. It was awake. The Iron Fang commander leaned forward in his chair, his spiked armor creaking, his grin fading. His instincts screamed at him. This ship was dangerous. The mysterious vessel sent out no messages, no threats, no demands. But across the Armada's channels, strange codes began to appear. Old battle signals, older than the current age of the galaxy, flashed across the screens of every ship. Some officers gasped in shock, recognizing fragments of ancient war records, codes from battles long buried in forgotten archives. To see them alive again was impossible. It was like watching a ghost from history reach out from the grave. The 9 destroyers moved in tighter, circling the vessel, trying to overwhelm it with numbers. But before they could fire again, the dark ship came alive. Panels on its sides slid open, revealing weapons the galaxy had never seen. Long barrels hummed with energy, and small drones detached from its hull, glowing like stars as they swarmed around it. The void shook with power as the first weapon fired. A single shot, a rail of pure force tore through the nearest destroyer. Its shields collapsed instantly, and the ship split apart in silence, flames spilling into the vacuum. Panic spread through the squadron. The second shot came faster, striking another ship and slicing it into two burning halves. The drones swarmed the third, attaching themselves to its hull, drilling through its armor with beams of light until it exploded. In seconds, 3 destroyers were gone. The Iron Fang commander roared in fury, ordering all nearby ships to converge, but his voice could not hide the unease in his eyes. This was not how battles were supposed to go. They were the predators, the unstoppable hunters of the galaxy, yet here they were, losing ships to a single vessel that had not even spoken a word. Across the cluster, alien outposts and listening stations picked up the chaos. Refugees watching from hidden corners of space gasped as they saw the impossible unfold. For years, they had only seen the Armada win, slaughter, and destroy. Now, for the first time, they saw Iron Fang ships burn. Whispers spread quickly. Perhaps this was not just another ship. Perhaps it was a savior. But the strange vessel did not act like a savior. It gave no comfort, sent no signals of peace. It only fought with cold, terrifying precision, dismantling the destroyers as if it had done this countless times before. By the time the smoke cleared, only wreckage floated in the void, pieces of Iron Fang's steel scattered like broken teeth. The Armada fell silent. Thousands of warships waited, their scanners locked on the dark vessel, but none dared move closer. For the first time in their long reign, hesitation gripped the predators of the galaxy. The commander clenched his fists, rage burning in his chest, but he could not deny the truth. Something ancient, something powerful had returned to the stars, and still the vessel did not speak. It only turned, its weapons glowing faintly, as if daring the entire armada to come closer. Without warning, the dark vessel unleashed its first true strike. The void lit up in blinding white as its rail cannons fired, each shot moving faster than thought itself. The slugs tore through the shields of the nearest Iron Fang cruisers as if they were made of glass, splitting their massive hulls in half. Pieces of burning metal drifted across the stars, glowing red like falling suns. Entire crews vanished in a single instant, their screams never leaving the broken ships. The Armada, which had always been the terror of the galaxy, suddenly looked small in the shadow of this one warship. The Iron Fang commander roared for retaliation, and hundreds of their warships launched a storm of plasma bolts and torpedoes. The sky turned into fire, 1,000 explosions surrounding the lone vessel. For a moment, it looked as if the mysterious ship would finally be swallowed by the storm. But then, from its hull, a shield shimmered into existence, a dome of light that bent the plasma away like rain hitting stone. The torpedoes exploded harmlessly, their shockwaves rolling across the barrier without leaving a mark. Silence fell across the Armada's comm channels as their weapons failed against something they could not understand. Then the vessel struck again, faster and harder. Panels along its sides opened, releasing swarms of drones no bigger than a fighter craft. They moved like living creatures, darting through enemy fire with impossible speed. Each drone carried beams of energy that cut through armor with surgical precision. They struck engines, weapon mounts, and reactor cores, disabling ships in seconds. Cruisers spun out of control, frigates exploded, and entire squadrons vanished before they could even regroup. Panic spread through the Armada. Iron Fang soldiers, bred for cruelty and war, shouted in disbelief over the comms. They had faced every species in the galaxy and crushed them without effort, yet now they were the ones being hunted. The mysterious warship did not fight like anything they had seen before. It was not reckless. It was not desperate. Every shot, every strike was planned, calm, and merciless. The Iron Fang commander tried to steady his fleet. He barked orders to surround the vessel, to use sheer numbers to pin it down. Hundreds of ships moved in, creating a wall of firepower from all sides. But the warship responded with something the galaxy had never seen. Its rail cannons shifted into rapid fire, hurling projectiles faster than light. Its plasma beams arced like lightning, striking 3, 4, 5 ships at once. Explosions rippled across the Armada like falling dominoes, each blast shaking the void. As the battle raged, the warship itself remained silent, giving no signal, no voice. To the Iron Fangs, it was like fighting a phantom, a ghost of war that had come to punish them. Fear began to crawl through their ranks. Crews muttered that this ship was cursed, that it carried the spirits of the dead. Some swore they saw faces in the glow of its shields, shadows of warriors long gone. Superstition spread like fire, weakening their will, even as the commander screamed for discipline. The Armada fired again, pouring everything they had into the fight. Massive dreadnoughts launched their heaviest weapons, energy blasts capable of tearing moons apart. The void shook, and the dark ship disappeared in the fire. Ironfang voices roared in triumph, believing they had finally ended it. But when the smoke cleared, the warship was still there, its shield glowing brighter, stronger, as if feeding on the enemy's own fury. The sight broke something inside the Armada. For the first time in their history, they knew what it felt like to doubt victory. On distant outposts and hidden colonies, alien refugees watched in shock as the battle unfolded on intercepted transmissions. They had seen only despair for years, their homes reduced to ash, their families scattered. Now, for the first time, they saw the impossible. Ironfang ships burning, retreating, shattering under the power of a single vessel. Whispers spread like fire. Some called it a miracle, others a weapon of the gods. Many simply cried because they had never thought hope could return. The Ironfang commander refused to accept defeat. His pride burned hotter than his rage. He ordered his elite guard, the strongest battleships of the Armada, to move in for the kill. They surrounded the warship, their weapons fully charged. They were ships that had never known failure, their names feared across the stars. But the warship answered with a strike so devastating that even the commander fell silent. It fired a massive plasma lance, a beam so bright it blinded every sensor in the system. The lance cut through the lead battleship from bow to stern, splitting it apart like paper. The explosion lit the void brighter than a sun, tearing nearby ships apart with its shockwave. The drones darted into the chaos, striking the others while they faltered dead, ripping them open before they could even aim. In minutes, the pride of the Armada lay in ruins. Silence fell. The Ironfang fleet, once confident and unbreakable, now hesitated. They were thousands strong, yet none dared advance. The commander's hands shook, his fangs grinding in rage, but he could not hide the fear in his eyes. His enemy was not another fleet, not another empire. It was something far worse. It was a power that did not belong to the weak galaxy he had conquered. Still, the vessel gave no answer, no declaration of war, no promise of peace. It simply hovered in the wreckage, its weapons glowing faintly, daring the Armada to come again. The commander looked at it and, for the first time, wondered if the age of Ironfang dominance had already ended. Inside the silent warship, the man who commanded it sat with steady eyes. Captain Marcus Hale did not smile, and he did not tremble. His face was carved by years of war, his hair touched with gray, and his hands scarred from battles that most of the galaxy had already forgotten. Around him, the crew was small, only a handful of men and women who had chosen exile and secrecy over comfort. Each one worked in silence, their movements precise. They had been waiting for this day, training for it, preparing for it, while the rest of the galaxy thought humanity had disappeared into obscurity. Marcus had lived through humanity's darkest times. Long ago, before the Ironfangs had become the terror they were now, humanity had nearly been wiped out by another war. The galaxy had watched as Earth burned, its cities shattered, and many had believed that humans would never rise again. Yet humanity had survived, not by begging for mercy, but by retreating into the shadows and building in silence. For centuries, they had hidden their strength, growing stronger, developing weapons that the galaxy could not imagine. While other civilizations traded, argued, and fell into despair, humans remembered. They remembered loss. They remembered the fire, and they swore never to be weak again. Marcus carried that oath in his heart. Every battle scar on his body was a reminder that humanity had paid its price in blood already. Now, as he looked at the Armada scattering before him, he whispered words not meant for his crew, but for the ghosts of the past. "You've had your reign of terror. Now it's our turn." The Ironfang commander raged on the other side of the battlefield, demanding answers, trying to understand what force had appeared to break his fleet. But Marcus gave none. His silence was louder than threats, his actions more powerful than words. The Armada was used to prey that screamed and begged. This human gave them nothing. He only delivered destruction, one precise strike at a time. The crew around Marcus worked with calm focus. Lieutenant Vega guided the drones with deadly precision, sending them through enemy lines like hunters in a forest. Engineer Tan kept the rail cannons glowing, feeding them with power from the ship's ancient core. Every member of the crew knew their place, and none questioned Marcus's orders. They had followed him into exile years ago, abandoning Earth's hidden fortresses to sail this lonely warship, and now they saw why. The ship itself was more than steel. It was Earth's last secret, a culmination of centuries of hidden work. Its weapons were forged from technologies scavenged, stolen, and reimagined from a dozen fallen civilizations. Its shields were layered with human ingenuity, designed not just to resist, but to adapt. Every piece of it carried humanity's defiance, every circuit a whisper of the promise that they would never bow again. To the rest of the galaxy, it looked like a ghost. To Marcus and his crew, it was home. Outside, the battle raged on. The Iron Fangs tried to regroup, sending heavier ships into the fight. They thought sheer numbers would finally overwhelm this lone opponent. Yet Marcus had studied them. Every weapon they fired, every formation they used, he had seen before in the simulations, in the histories, in the intelligence gathered across years of silence. Humanity had been watching while the galaxy suffered. Marcus had been preparing for this exact enemy long before they even knew his name. The first of the Iron Fang heavy cruisers broke formation, moving in fast. Marcus gave a single nod and the warship's side batteries opened fire. The blast did not just destroy the cruiser, they cut through its entire squadron, tearing them apart in seconds. The crew said nothing. Their silence was not cold, but heavy, like soldiers carrying the weight of destiny. The Iron Fang commander finally spoke across the comms, his deep, snarling voice filled with fury. "What are you? Who dares to defy us?" His demand echoed across the fleet, but Marcus did not reply. He leaned back in his chair, eyes fixed on the burning wrecks before him. To reveal himself now would be to give away too much. Humanity's return had to be felt, not explained. Yet whispers spread among the Iron Fangs themselves. Some had intercepted fragments of the ship's codes, strange patterns that carried echoes of an old language. They tried to decode it and found fragments of words. Earth, human, soul. The names meant little to most, forgotten in the long chaos of history. But to a few old scholars across the galaxy, those words were enough to send shivers down their spines. They knew humanity's legend of a people who had risen from nothing and fought gods of war with bare hands. They knew that humans had vanished, but not died. Marcus's crew could feel the shift too. The enemy was no longer as confident. Their formations wavered, their fire less precise. Fear was creeping in, and Marcus pressed on that weakness. He ordered no speeches, no taunts. He only ordered the warship forward, cutting deeper into the armada. Every explosion was a message louder than words. Humanity had returned. The refugees watching from distant stations did not yet understand who this lone warrior was. They only knew that for the first time in years, someone was winning against the Iron Fangs. They wept, they shouted, they prayed. Some dared to believe that the Age of Terror could finally end. They did not know the name Marcus Hale, but soon the galaxy would. The Iron Fang commander slammed his claws against the console, his pride shattered by the sight of his fleet breaking apart. He wanted to scream, to demand answers, but in the silence of space, the only answer he received was the hum of the human warship's engines as it advanced. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment, breathing steady. He knew this was only the beginning. The armada was vast, endless. His single ship could not defeat them all, but it could show the galaxy a truth that had been forgotten. Humans did not run. Humans did not kneel. They fought, and when they fought, they changed everything. And as the wreckage of the Iron Fangs burned across the stars, Captain Marcus Hale allowed himself a single grim smile. The galaxy had underestimated humanity. Now it would learn the price of that mistake. The Iron Fang armada was vast, stretching across the stars like a wall of steel and fire. Thousands of ships answered the commander's call, their engines blazing as they moved to surround the lone warship. From dreadnoughts the size of cities to swift hunter ships designed for close combat, the fleet tightened its grip on the mysterious vessel. The commander believed sheer numbers would crush this phantom. It was how the Iron Fangs had always won. They drowned their enemies in fire until there was nothing left but silence. But Captain Marcus Hale had lived through worse. He stood tall on his bridge, eyes steady, studying the screens. He saw not chaos, but patterns. Every move of the armada, every angle of their formation was a piece of a puzzle he had already solved. Humanity had studied these warlords for decades in secret. He knew how they fought. He knew their pride blinded them. He whispered one word to his crew. Advance. The warship moved forward into the swarm, cutting through the void with engines glowing gold. The crew worked like a single mind. Drones shot out again, hundreds of them scattering like sparks. They weaved between enemy squadrons, too fast to hit, striking weak points with surgical accuracy. A frigate's engines went dark. A destroyer's weapon mounts were sliced off. A cruiser spun into the path of its allies, colliding and breaking apart. The swarm of drones turned the armada's numbers against itself. The rail cannons thundered again, each shot a spear of death. One slug punched straight through an enemy battleship, piercing its reactor. The ship exploded in silence, a sun blooming in the black void, its fragments tearing through smaller ships nearby. Plasma lances followed, beams of blue light arcing like lightning, burning through Iron Fang shields that were supposed to be indestructible. Each time the mysterious vessel fired, more Iron Fang ships vanished, until the battlefield looked less like a war and more like an execution. Yet the armada pressed forward. The commander refused to retreat. He sent his heaviest dreadnoughts, ships that had broken entire planetary defenses by themselves. They closed in from all sides, their weapons fully charged, their cannons glowing with energy. Their firepower was enough to destroy moons, enough to wipe out whole cities in a single strike. They unleashed everything at once, the void trembling with blinding light and endless explosions. For a moment, even Marcus's crew held their breath. The ship vanished inside the storm. But when the smoke cleared, the vessel emerged again, its shields cracked but unbroken. Energy rippled across its armor, adapting, strengthening, almost alive. It was not just resisting the onslaught, it was learning from it. The crew exhaled, detect their faith renewed. Marcus gave another order. Now. The warship struck with fury. Its drones swarmed the largest dreadnought, drilling into its armor and unleashing energy blasts from the inside. The ship convulsed before splitting apart, a giant torn to pieces. The rail cannons fired into another, snapping its spine in half. A plasma lance cut a third in two, spilling molten fragments into the battlefield. 3 dreadnoughts, symbols of Iron Fang pride, were destroyed in less than a minute. The armada's lines faltered. Captains shouted in confusion. Crews panicked as their ships lost contact with command. The commander roared at them to fight on, but fear had already spread like poison. They were no longer predators. They were prey, being hunted by something they did not understand. From hidden colonies and stations, refugees intercepted the battle. Their screens lit up with the impossible sight of Iron Fang dreadnoughts burning. They wept, they screamed, they held their children close and whispered that maybe, just maybe, salvation had come. They did not know who commanded the ship or where it had come from, but they knew one thing. The age of Iron Fang terror was breaking. Marcus stood silent on his bridge, his hands steady on the controls. He knew this victory was not final. The armada's numbers were too great, and one ship, no matter how powerful, could not end them all. But this battle was never about destroying every Iron Fang vessel. It was about showing the galaxy the truth. The armada could bleed. The armada could fall. Fear could be broken. The Iron Fang commander clenched his fists, his claws tearing into the console. His pride screamed at him to keep fighting, to prove the armada was still invincible. But with every ship that exploded, every dreadnought that burned, the truth became harder to ignore. His fleet, his empire, was facing something it could not defeat. His soldiers, once fearless, now looked to him with doubt in their eyes. Doubt was more deadly than any weapon. Still, Marcus did not gloat. He did not speak to his enemies or send a single message across the void. His silence was sharper than any threat. The armada expected a warrior to roar in triumph, to boast, to declare vengeance. Instead, the human captain gave them nothing but destruction. That silence was worse than words. It was the silence of judgment, of inevitability, of doom. The battlefield grew quiet as more ships drifted lifeless in space. Flames burned across shattered hulls, lighting the dark void with red and gold. Survivors among the armada looked at the warship with terror, whispering superstitions to themselves. Some believed it was not real, that it was a spirit of war sent to punish them for their cruelty. Others thought it was a weapon of forgotten gods. Few could believe it was only human. The warship hovered in the wreckage, its weapons glowing faintly, daring the armada to continue. Marcus's eyes were cold as he watched. He knew the fight would go on. The Iron Fangs would not stop here. They would come again, stronger, angrier. But this moment mattered more than all the battles to come. He had torn the mask off the galaxy's greatest predators and shown the truth beneath. They were not unstoppable. They were not eternal. They could be broken. And as the human warship stood alone against the countless enemies before it, the galaxy watching from afar began to believe in a new story, not of terror, but of resistance, of defiance, of hope, born in the darkest night. Fragments of wreckage floated through the void, glowing faintly against the cold stars. The once proud Iron Fang armada, feared by every living race, had been torn open by a single warship that should not have existed. Across the galaxy, transmissions carried pieces of the battle. Outposts, hidden colonies, even broken refugee stations picked up the signals, and in those broken signals lay a truth that spread like fire. Someone was fighting back and winning. Alien refugees who had lost their homes huddled around flickering screens, eyes wide as they watched the impossible unfold. Children who had grown up in fear, who only knew the sight of black Iron Fang ships blotting out the stars, now saw those same ships burning, breaking, and scattering like frightened prey. Some did not believe it at first. They thought it was a trick, a false broadcast meant to give them hope, only to crush it later. But as more ships exploded, as more wreckage filled the battlefield, doubt gave way to trembling belief. For the first time in years, hope returned. The intercepted codes confirmed the whispers. Among the shattered transmissions of the Iron Fangs, fragments of strange signals repeated again and again. At first, they were dismissed as interference. But then scholars, hiding in exile, began to decode them. What they found chilled them to the bone. The codes were old, older than the current age of the galaxy, older than most of the civilizations still standing. They were battle signals from humanity. For centuries, the galaxy had believed humans were broken, their homeworld crippled by ancient wars. Many species had written them off as weak, fragile, unimportant. A few remembered stories, whispers of human defiance, of battles fought against impossible odds, but most had forgotten, dismissing them as myths. Now the myths had come alive. The strange warship, with its impossible weapons and unyielding silence, was human. And the man at its helm was proof that humanity had not only survived, but prepared for this very day. Panic spread across the Iron Fang fleet. Their captains shouted in fear as they realized who they faced. To them, humans were supposed to be dead or scattered, irrelevant wanderers of the stars. Yet here was a human warship tearing their mighty armada apart. Fear began to rot their discipline. Crews muttered that the humans had been waiting in the shadows, watching, learning, building weapons to destroy them all. The commander snarled and tried to silence the rumors, but even he could not ignore the ancient codes flashing across his screens. The ghosts of old wars had returned, and they wore human faces. On hidden planets and shattered colonies, whispers turned to cheers. Leaders who had once given up hope now sent secret transmissions, calling to one another, daring to believe unity might be possible again. If the humans had risen, perhaps others could too. Across the galaxy, resistance that had been silent for years stirred awake. Small militias, once hiding in fear, began to think of fighting again, all because one human warship had stood against the armada. Inside his vessel, Captain Marcus Hale remained calm. His crew worked in silence, carrying out his orders with precision. They too had heard the whispers, the intercepted messages spreading their presence across the stars. They knew that soon the galaxy would learn humanity had returned. But Marcus was not fighting for glory. He was not here to announce his name. He was here to send a message in the only language the Iron Fangs understood: fire and destruction. The Iron Fang commander's rage boiled over. He ordered every surviving ship to regroup and crush the lone human. He shouted that no ghost, no forgotten species could challenge the armada. Yet his words lacked the power they once carried. His soldiers no longer looked at him with blind loyalty. They looked past him, at the burning wrecks, at the warship that refused to fall. Their fear was no longer of disobeying him. Their fear was of what the humans might do next. Marcus gave no speech, no warning. His silence remained as sharp as his weapons. His warship cut through the last wave of Iron Fang cruisers, dismantling them with the same ruthless precision as before. Every explosion carved the truth deeper into the galaxy's heart. Humans were not gone, and they would not be prey. They would be the hunters now. From far-off star systems, transmissions flooded the void. Aliens spoke the word human in disbelief, some in awe, some in fear. Old archives were opened, dusty records of ancient battles reread. The galaxy remembered what it had chosen to forget. Humanity had been underestimated, mocked, ignored. Now it stood as the one force capable of facing the predators that had enslaved them all. In refugee camps, voices rose together for the first time in years. Parents told their children about humans, about how they had always fought hardest when all seemed lost. In the halls of broken governments, leaders debated whether to reach out, to find the humans, and beg for alliance. Across the stars, the age of despair began to crack, replaced by the possibility of defiance. The Iron Fangs had built their empire on fear. Fear was their greatest weapon, more powerful than any plasma cannon or dreadnought. But Marcus had taken that weapon from them. By standing alone and surviving, he had shattered their illusion of invincibility. That loss of fear was more dangerous to the Armada than any battle, because once the galaxy stopped being afraid, the Iron Fang's empire would crumble. The commander of the Armada knew it. As he stared at the human warship hovering in the wreckage, his claws dug into his chair. His voice shook with fury, but also with something far worse: doubt. He could kill millions, burn planets, enslave species, but he could not kill the story that had just been born, the story of the humans' return. Captain Marcus Hale looked out at the battlefield, his eyes cold but steady. He knew this was only the beginning. More battles would come, harder and bloodier than this one. But he had achieved what he came for. The galaxy had seen. The galaxy now remembered. Humanity had survived, and humanity would fight. And in the silence that followed, as the wreckage drifted and the stars burned quietly around them, the message spread across every corner of the galaxy. Humans had returned, and the Iron Fang's age of terror was ending. The last of the Iron Fang dreadnoughts shuddered under the human warship's fire. Its shields cracked, its armor split, and its engines erupted into flames that spread across the massive hull. The crew inside screamed as the dreadnought broke apart, spilling molten fragments into the void. A single rail slug from the human vessel tore straight through its core, and in an instant, the great beast of war was gone. The explosion painted the darkness in red and gold, and the shockwave rattled the smaller ships that remained. Silence followed. For the first time in centuries, the Iron Fang Armada was not advancing. It was retreating. On the human bridge, Captain Marcus Hale watched without a word. His eyes remained calm, though his chest rose and fell with the weight of battle. Around him, his crew exhaled in quiet disbelief. They had trained for this day, prepared for this fight, but none of them had truly believed they could bring the monsters of the galaxy to their knees. Yet here they were, standing alone against thousands and still breathing. Marcus did not smile, but a small fire lit in his eyes. The message had been sent. Across the galaxy, the battle's echoes reached distant systems. Refugees gathered around transmitters, holding their breath as they heard the impossible news. The Iron Fang Armada had been broken in open combat. Children who had never seen victory in their lifetimes cried and laughed at once, clinging to their parents as hope returned to their hearts. Entire colonies fell silent, staring at the stars as if they had changed overnight. No longer were the Iron Fangs untouchable. They could be defeated, and they had been defeated by a single ship, commanded by a human. The news spread like wildfire. Merchant ships whispered it across trade routes. Smugglers carried it in hushed tones to outlaw stations. Even slaves on broken worlds heard the rumor from guards who could not stop their trembling hands. Everywhere, the story grew, reshaped, retold. Some called it a miracle. Others called it vengeance. But all agreed on one truth: the humans had returned. In the wreckage, Iron Fang survivors scrambled to escape. Dozens of their ships powered down weapons and fled at full speed, abandoning the battlefield without shame. Pride, once their greatest weapon, was gone. The commander of the Armada screamed orders, demanding they regroup, but no one listened. His commands fell on empty comm channels, drowned by the silence of broken will. For the first time, his soldiers no longer feared him more than death. They feared the warship, the human ghost that had burned through their fleets like fire through dry grass. The galaxy's leaders, watching from afar, sat frozen in disbelief. For years, they had lived in terror, debating how much longer they could survive. Some had tried to fight and failed. Others had surrendered quietly, hoping to be spared. All had believed the Iron Fangs unstoppable. Now they saw differently. Humanity, the forgotten race, the fragile species, had done what no empire had achieved. The galaxy's rulers began to speak in secret meetings. Some wanted to find the humans and beg for alliance. Others wanted to hide, fearing what humanity would do next. But none could ignore the truth. Power had shifted, and the balance of the galaxy had changed forever. On the bridge of the warship, Marcus's crew looked at him with pride and fear. They knew what they had done was more than a battle. They had lit a fire in the hearts of billions. They had broken the greatest weapon of the Armada, not their ships, but their legend of invincibility. Marcus leaned back in his chair, the weight of command heavy on his shoulders. He knew the fight was not over. The Iron Fangs would return, angrier than ever, with even greater fleets. But the seed had been planted. Others would rise now, fueled by the courage of what they had seen. Humanity did not need to fight alone anymore. The battlefield was quiet now, filled only with drifting debris. Flames burned faintly in the wreckage of hundreds of Iron Fang ships. The human warship hovered among them like a phantom, its dark hull scarred but unbroken. It looked less like a vessel of steel and more like a symbol carved into the night sky. A message written not in words but in fire. The galaxy would never forget it. On planets still enslaved, alien workers looked to the stars and whispered of humans. On refugee stations, elders told children the old stories again, this time with new endings. On military outposts, officers planned and plotted, no longer in despair but in determination. And in the shadows of ruined worlds, resistance began to rise. Weapons were sharpened, ships repaired, banners lifted once more. All because the humans had shown that the Armada could fall. The Iron Fang commander, once so proud, sat in silence on his shattered bridge. His claws trembled as he stared at the images of his burning fleet. His empire, built on fear, had been cracked open in a single day. He could not erase the memory of that warship, nor silence the whispers that were already spreading faster than he could control. He realized, with a weight heavier than defeat, that the galaxy would never fear him the same way again. Fear had shifted to something new. Fear now belonged to the Iron Fangs themselves. Marcus stood from his chair, his voice steady as he gave the final order. Pull back. The warship turned, its engines glowing gold as it slipped back into the shadows of space. It left no message, no warning, only wreckage and silence. The Armada had been defeated, and the galaxy had been given its proof. Humanity had returned. As the ship vanished into the void, across countless worlds, a single thought spread like dawn breaking over endless night. The age of Iron Fang terror was ending, and a new age had begun. The age of humans, the age of defiance, the age of hope.